Malaysia 2026 campaign officially kicks off. 18 soldiers return home to Cambodia after ceasefire. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today with me, Otto Othman. The Visit Malaysia 2026 VM 2026 campaign officially kicked off with the staging of the Visit Malaysia 2026 Countdown Festival, a large-scale New Year's Eve celebration held in vibrant fashion last night at Pavilion, Kuala Lumpur. The Countdown Festival, attended by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, marked the start of efforts to build early momentum for the national tourism sector towards the target of 43 million international visitor arrivals, in line with the aspiration of positioning Malaysia as a leading global tourist destination. The celebratory atmosphere was further enlivened by the appearance of Wira and Manja, the Sun Bear mascots of VM 2026, symbolizing Malaysia's identity, warmth and uniqueness as a world-class tourism destination. Also present were Tourism, Arts and Culture Minister Datuk Seri Tiong King Sing and Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Sabah and Sarawak, Datuk Mustafa Sakmun. The New Year's Eve celebration also featured a variety of cultural and entertainment performances, reflecting the diversity of local talent with the participation of well-known artists. Now, as a major public event marking the launch of VM 2026, the festival successfully attracted thousands of local visitors and tourists, further strengthening Malaysia's presence on the international tourism stage. Meanwhile, in Putrajaya, the Putra Mosque was filled with a spiritual ambience as thousands joined the Gema Syukur 2026 program, taking part in Yasin and Doa Selamat recitations, Tadabbur Al-Quran, the podcast Membina Ummah Rahmah dan Selawat Munajat to usher in the new year. At midnight, prayers and salawat marked the arrival of 2026, providing Muslims with a calm and reflective alternative celebration grounded in spiritual values. People around the world said goodbye to sometimes challenging 2025 as the clock ticked down and expressed hopes and aspirations for the new year. Thailand stepped into 2026 with a countdown and an eco-friendly fireworks display that lit up the Bangkok sky along the Chao Phraya River over department store icon Siam. The show, which spanned 1,400 meters, also included a 4D aerial performance, a fusion of drone and pyrotechnic displays under the theme In Eternity Reverence to honor the late Queen Mother, Sirikit, who passed away in October. Meanwhile, China marked the start of 2026 with an immersive light show and countdown at the famous Zhuoyungguan section of the Great Wall. For the celebration titled Bell Rings, Drums Roll, Beijing Begins 2026, the facade of the traditional temple at Zhuoyungguan was transformed via immersive projections. Crowds braved sub-zero temperatures for an audio-visual display that included a live drum performance, accompanied by a giant display of horses moving to the rhythm. In Taiwan, thousands gathered in front of the Taipei 101 Tower as they welcomed the start of 2026. Taipei 101, Taiwan's tallest skyscraper, lit up the sky with dazzling fireworks as the clock struck midnight. The fireworks display lasted a total of 6 minutes and was accompanied by music and a light show. More than 10,000 South Koreans celebrated the New Year with a traditional bell-tolling ceremony in central Seoul. Following a public countdown at the Businga Bell Pavilion, the bronze bell inside was struck 33 times by the invited civic representatives. The tradition, rooted in Buddhist cosmology, is intended to dispel misfortune while welcoming peace and prosperity for the year ahead.
10, 9.
Over in Sydney, residents welcomed the start of 2026 with the city's biggest ever fireworks display, which featured a waterfall effect falling from the top of the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge. The display covered the largest area to date, with more launch sites added on the western side of the bridge and another city centre rooftop. The 12-minute spectacular display stretched 7 kilometers along Sydney Harbour and featured 25,000 individual pyrotechnic shots that shaped into cockatoos, koalas, bottle brush and other Australian native plants and animals. Dubai's Burj Khalifa was lit up with a stunning firework display as the UAE celebrated the new year. Footage included the epic countdown show on the stroke of midnight, which lasted over 8 minutes. The celebration centered on the iconic tower with synchronized pyrotechnics and LED displays. Cambodians welcomed 18 soldiers home after Thailand released them on Wednesday under a renewed ceasefire agreed by the two countries at the weekend. Authorities from both countries said easing tensions after weeks of deadly border clashes. As part of last Saturday's deal to halt the fighting, Thailand agreed to release the 18 soldiers in its custody if the ceasefire held for 72 hours. However, the handover was delayed by 1 day after Thailand made allegations of ceasefire violations by Cambodia, which Cambodia denied. A convoy of buses brought the soldiers out of Phnom Penh's old airport as crowds gathered by the roadside to cheer and display Cambodian flags.
បងចាំថ្ងៃនឹងយូរហើយព្រោះថាដោះលែងមកម្ដងហើយម្ដងទៀតម្ដងហើយម្ដងទៀតតាំងពីម្សិលមិញពេលខ្លះបងអូនឃើញព័ត៌មានតាំងម្សិលមិញហូបអីអត់ចូលទេថាដោះលែងមក72ម៉ោងហើយគាត់អត់ព្រមដោះលែងដល់ពេលព្រឹកមិញម៉ោង10គាត់បញ្ជូនមកវិញសប្បាយចិត្តរំភើបកាដូឆ្លងឆ្នាំហ្មងហើយក៏អរគុណដល់ថាវិបាលដែលបានព្យាយាមជួយសម្របសម្រួលឲ្យពួកគាត់មកវិញ
The handover was coordinated by the International Committee of the Red Cross, which praised both sides for reaching a truce.
76 minit tanpa henti.
76 minutes non-stop. Transparent and concise.
Paparan komprehensif, ringkas dan padat. Saksikan Kanta 744 7.44 malam. Berita perdana 8 malam.
Malaysia tonight, 8:30 p.m.
Russian President Vladimir Putin used his annual televised New Year's address to rally his troops fighting in Ukraine, saying he believed in them and in victory in a war that he has framed as part of an existential struggle with the West. U.S. President Donald Trump is trying to broker an end to the nearly 4-year-old conflict, Europe's bloodiest confrontation since World War II, with both sides negotiating the stances still far apart. Dressed in a black coat, Putin, whose forces are advancing slowly but steadily in Ukraine, spoke about Russia's destiny and the unity of its people, which he said guaranteed the sovereignty and security of the fatherland. He paid tribute in particular to his forces fighting in Ukraine, calling them heroes. His speech, which was first broadcast in Russia's Far East, came as Russia released video footage of what it said was a downed drone, presenting it as evidence that Ukraine had tried this week to attack a presidential residence. Kyiv has dismissed Russia's allegation as a lie designed to derail peace talks. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said his country is 10% away from a deal to end the war with Russia, but cautioned that the most important issues are resolved and warned against rewarding Moscow. U.S.-led efforts to end Europe's deadliest conflict since the World War II have gained pace in recent weeks, but both sides remain at odds over a key issue of territory in a post-war settlement. Russia is pushing for full control of Donbas region as part of a deal, but Ukraine warns that any territorial concessions will only embolden Moscow. Zelensky said his country wants an end to the war, but not at any cost, and any agreement needs strong security guarantees to deter Russia from invading again. The war, now entering its 5th calendar year, has resulted in a tidal wave of destruction that has displaced billions and left entire Ukrainian cities in ruins. The United Nations rights chief described Israel's threat to suspend dozens of aid groups from operating in Gaza from January as outrageous, calling on states to urgently insist Israel to shift course. Volker Turk warned that such arbitrary suspensions make an already intolerable situation even worse for the people of Gaza. His comment came after Israel said 37 aid organizations will be banned from operating in Gaza unless they comply with its new guidelines requiring detailed information on Palestinian staff. Turk said this is the latest in a pattern of unlawful restriction on humanitarian access, pointing to Israel's ban on the UN agency supporting Palestinian refugees, UNRWA, and attacks on NGOs amid broader access issues faced by the UN and other humanitarians. He urged all states, in particular those with influence, to take urgent steps and insist that Israel immediately allows aid to get into Gaza unhindered. He also reminded the Israeli authorities of their obligation under international law to ensure that essential supplies of daily life in Gaza. He stressed that this includes allowing and facilitating humanitarian relief. On a related note, international medical charity Doctors Without Borders urged Israel to allow it to continue operating in Gaza and the occupied West Bank next year. The charity called on Israel to ensure that Doctors Without Borders and other international non-governmental organizations are registered to continue working in the West Bank and Gaza. It said it had been informed by Israel that its registration will be revoked and the charity would have to cease its operations by 1st March. The organization added Israel considers its registration application to be incomplete. As such, the charity said it will be exploring all possible avenues to alter the outcomes of this decision. For next year, Doctors Without Borders has committed an estimated 100 to 120 million euros for its humanitarian response in Gaza. Many of the services provided by the charity are largely unavailable elsewhere in Gaza due to the destruction of the health system in the territory. Israeli bulldozers began demolishing 25 buildings housing Palestinians in a refugee camp in northern areas of the occupied West Bank. The buildings, home to some 100 families, are in the Nur Shams camp, a frequent site of clashes between Palestinian groups and Israeli forces. Israeli military bulldozers and cranes tore through the structures, sending thick plumes of dust into the air. Nihaya Al-Jendi, a member of Nur Shams' Popular Committee, said hundreds of families had been forced out of their homes even before the military operation began earlier this year.
انت ما بتحكي عن 100 عائله سوف تشرد بهذا الهدم. هناك عائلات اكثر من 500 عائله تقريبا، وسابقا قبل التشريع قبل 7/2 كان في عائلات سابقه كمان شردت من المخيم وهدمت بيوتها وتم استئجار بيوت لها سابقا، واليوم انت بتحكي عن اكثر من 1500 عائله في المخيم لن تتمكن من الرجوع للمخيم، وهذه كارثه الكبرى. هذه كارثه كبرى وانسانيه بحق اللاجئين الفلسطينيين على مر العالم.
Demolitions form part of a broader Israeli strategy aimed at easing access for military vehicles within the densely built refugee camps of the West Bank. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani announced more top posts for his incoming administration on Wednesday ahead of his swearing-in ceremony at midnight. To lead the nation's largest school system, he tapped Kamar Samuels, a Manhattan superintendent. Samuels started his career path more than 20 years ago as an elementary school teacher in the Bronx. As NYC Schools Chancellor, he will be responsible for more than 1,500 schools and approximately 906,248 students, according to the city's current Department of Education. Mamdani also announced his selections for Deputy Mayor for Operations Julia Kerson, Chief Climate Officer Louis Young, and Executive Director for the Office of Child Care Emmy Liz. The former state lawmaker's 4-year mayoral term starts on 1st January 2026. He will be New York's first Muslim mayor, and it remains to be seen if Mamdani, virtually unknown as a year ago, can deliver on his ambitious agenda which envisions rent-frees, universal childcare and free public buses. Coming up next, Jair Bolsonaro expected to be discharged later today. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is expected to be discharged from hospital on 1st January as he recovers from conventional surgery for bilateral inguinal hernia repair. Now, according to a statement by the DF Star Hospital, his condition has improved, including his hiccup episodes, although esophagitis and gastritis persist. Bolsonaro was temporarily released from prison last week for hernia treatment to undergo an unscheduled procedure on Tuesday to treat persistent hiccups. In office from 2019 to 2022, the ex-president has for years been dealing with complications from an abdominal stab wound he suffered during the 2018 campaign rally, requiring several major surgeries. According to Brazilian media, he is expected to return to the Federal Police Superintendency to resume serving his prison sentence. Bolsonaro, 70, had already undergone 2 surgical procedures at the Brasilia hospital for the same reason since Saturday, as well as hernia surgery. In November, the former president began serving a 27-year sentence for plotting a coup after his 2022 election defeat. The Eastern Theater Command of Chinese People's Liberation Army, or PLA, announced on Wednesday that it has successfully completed Justice Mission 2025 drills. Through the drills, the Theater Command fully tested the integrated joint operations capabilities of its troops. Li Qi, a spokesperson for the Theater Command, stated that forces will intensify combat readiness through rigorous training to thwart Taiwanese secessionists' efforts and external interference while firmly upholding national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The exercises, which started on Monday, involved Army, Navy, Air Force and Rocket Force units operating in the Taiwan Strait and waters to the north, southwest, southeast and east of Taiwan Island. Taipei slammed the war games as highly provocative and reckless and said they failed to impose a blockade of the self-ruled island. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te warned that Chinese drills targeting the island are not an isolated incident and pose significant risks to the region. There has been a chorus of international criticism of China's drill. U.S. President Donald Trump has withdrawn National Guard troops from Chicago, Los Angeles and Portland. Trump said his administration is abandoning its efforts to deploy the National Guard in these cities in a rare retreat after resistance from local leaders. Trump, however, warned that federal forces could be redeployed if crime rises again. In a post on his social media platform, Trump claimed that the presence of the Guard had led to a reduction in crime in the 3 cities and suggested the pullback would be reversed if conditions deteriorated. Trump's announcement on New Year's Eve marked a capitalization by the president after months of legal battles over the limits of his authority to federalize the National Guard and deploy military troops on U.S. soil. Sending members of the National Guard into major cities to deter crime and support immigration and customs enforcement agents has been one of the most visible signs of change on American streets during Trump's second term. But the deployments, which have predominantly targeted Democrat-controlled cities, have sparked controversy, protests and legal challenges. The U.S. military announced that 3 people were killed in strikes on 3 alleged drug boats in international waters. This brings the death toll in Washington's campaign against what it says are narcotics traffickers to at least 110. U.S. Southern Command, which is responsible for American forces operating in Central and Southern America, said the strikes targeted 3 narco-trafficking vessels traveling as convoy. Now, it said all 3 people killed were on 1 boat, while the others abandoned the other 2 vessels, jumping overboard and distancing themselves before follow-on engagements sank their respective vessels. The exact location of the strikes was not immediately made clear, and previous strikes have taken place in the Caribbean or the Eastern Pacific. The military claimed that the targeted vessels were operated by designated terrorist organizations. It also said it had notified the Coast Guard to activate the search and rescue system without offering more details about the fate of those aboard the other boats. A total of 128 journalists were killed around the world in 2025, more than half of them in West Asia. The International Federation of Journalists, IFJ, said the grim toll, up from 2024, is not just a statistic, it is a global red alert for its colleagues. Now, the press group voiced particular alarm over the situation in the Palestinian territories, where it recorded 56 media professionals killed last year as Israel's war with Hamas ground on in Gaza. It said journalists were also killed in Yemen, Ukraine, Sudan, Peru, India, and elsewhere. The group condemned what it called impunity for those behind the attacks, saying that without justice, it allows the killers of journalists to thrive. The IFJ's count for the number of journalists killed is typically far higher than that of Reporters Without Borders due to different counting methods. The IFJ toll also included 9 accidental deaths. Reporters Without Borders said 67 journalists were killed in the course of their work last year, while UNESCO put the figure at 93. Bulgaria became the 21st country to switch to the euro as it entered the new year, a milestone met with both cheers and fears nearly 20 years after the Balkan nation joined the European Union. At midnight, Bulgaria gave up the lev currency, which has been in use since the late 19th century, and Bulgarian euro coins were projected onto the central bank's building. Successive governments in the country have advocated joining the euro, hoping that it will boost the economy, reinforce ties to the West, and protect against Russia's influence. But Bulgarians have long been divided over the switch, with many worrying the introduction could usher in higher prices and add to the political instability rattling the country. President Rumen Radev hailed the euro adoption as the final step in Bulgaria's EU integration. Radev, however, voiced regret that Bulgarians had not been consulted by referendum on the adoption. The refusal was one of the dramatic symptoms of the deep divide between the political class and the people, confirmed by mass demonstrations across the country. Anti-corruption protests swept a conservative-led government from office in mid-December, leaving the country on the verge of its 8th election in 5 years. Still to come in sports, Al Hilal powers past Al Khulud in Saudi Pro League. Now, the SEA Games Thailand 2025 silver medalist Ng Jin Xuan hopes that throwing disciplines, particularly the javelin, will gain wider recognition and appreciation among the public. The young athlete from Miri, Sarawak said that throwing events, which are part of field athletics, are still less well known compared to track events such as sprints. However, Jing Xuan voiced hope that the success achieved by the athletics squad in Thailand, particularly in the throwing disciplines, would help change the situation ahead of the 2027 SEA Games in Malaysia. In addition to throwing events, which also include shot put, discus and hammer throw, Jing Xuan said field athletics also featured jumping disciplines such as long jump and high jump. At the recently concluded 2025 SEA Games, Jing Xuan turned in a memorial performance after winning the silver medal and breaking the national record with a throw of 52.17 meters at the Supa Chalasai Stadium, Bangkok. Homestar Daria Wachaidit clinched the gold with a throw of 55.64 meters, while the bronze went to Philippines' Ana Bianca Espenila, who recorded 51.66 meters. Jing Chuan, making her second appearance after finishing fourth at the 2023 edition in Cambodia, erased the national record of 49.34 meters previously held by Siti Nurnadia Othman. Theo Hernandez scored a brace to power Al Hilal to a 3-1 win away to Al Hulud in the Saudi Pro League early this morning. Al Hilal, unbeaten with 9 wins and 2 draws after their first 11 matches, closed the gap on leaders Al Nassr to just 2 points, with the latter leading the standings on 31 points after their first hiccup in the league with a 2-all draw away to Al Ettifaq on Tuesday. The hosts were reduced to 10 men in the 37th minute when Abdulrahman Al-Dawsari received a straight red card before Sergei Milenkovic-Savic put Al Hilal a goal up, only for Romero Enrique to level matters from the penalty spot moments later in first half injury time. It was all Al Hilal after that, though with Hernandez restoring their lead in the 61st minute when he latched on to the rebound of Milinkovic-Savic's saved shot and fired in from the left of the box. He then secured all 3 points 23 minutes later, with the Serbian knocking it to him to change the angle of the free kick, and Hernandez then slotted into the bottom left corner. Hernandez had already scored 3 goals this season, but added to that tally with a clinical attacking display at King Abdullah Sports City Stadium. Meanwhile, in Tabuk, Steven Berwan scored and assisted for Al Ittihad as they defeated Niam 3-1 yesterday. A superb free kick from Said Benrahma cancelled out Roger Fernandez's opener, but Bergwan managed to find the net in the 68th minute before Ahmad Al-Ghamdi made sure of 3 points for his side at King Khalid Sports City Stadium in second half stoppage time. After a tentative start from both sides, Al Ittihad took the lead after 14 minutes. Bergwan picked up the ball on the right wing before floating across to the far post, where Fernandez was on hand to convert home with a diving header. Karim Benzema and Muhannad Al-Shankiti both missed chances to double their lead, and they were made to pay when Benrahma's free kick shortly before the half-hour mark could only be tipped onto the side of the post and in by Predrag Rakovic. After Niam made a fast start to the second half, Al Ittihad quickly found their rhythm to take the lead as Bergwijn swept past Luis Maximiano with a first-time finish from Musa Derby's cutback. Al-Ghamdi went on to make sure of the win for the visitors in the 96th minute, cutting into the top right corner after a swift counter-attack. Well, that wraps up World Today this time around. In our top story, Visit Malaysia 2026 campaign officially kicks off. Until next time, I'm Otto Othman. Salam Malaysia Madani, and thanks for watching.